Chapter 2, Section 4, You Only Die Twice. In the section You Only Die Twice, Zizek engages in a profound exploration of the relationship between the death drive, the symbolic order, and their implications for understanding history, revolution, and political system. 1. The death drive and symbolic order in Lacan's teaching. 2. The notion of the second death and its manifestations. 3. Benjamin's thesis on history and the concept of revolution. 4. The figure of communist and the concept of democracy. And conclusion. Now let's go back to 1. The death drive and the symbolic order in Lacan's teaching. Zizek begins by tracing the evolution of Lacan's ideas regarding the connection between the death drive and the symbolic order. In the initial stage, the world was seen as a kind of murder of the thing. As one's reality is symbolized, the thing's immediate physical presence is supplanted by its concept. In the second phase, the death drive was identified with the symbolic order itself, which disrupts the imaginary homeostasis governed by the pleasure principle. Finally, in a later development of Lacan's thought, the death drive was redefined as the potential for the radical annihilation of symbolic texture, which the symbolic order was associated with the pleasure principle and structured around an unsymbolizable traumatic kernel, the thing, destined with capital T. These different conceptions have significant consequences for the understanding of the psychoanalytic cure. In the early stage, the goal was the symbolization of symptoms. Later, it was the acceptance of symbolic castration. And in the final stage, it was going through the fantasy to confront the void in the big other. 2. The notion of the second death and its manifestations. Zizek introduces the concept of the second death inspired by Marquis de Sade. This refers to the radical destruction of the circle of nature and the symbolic universe, as opposed to nature death, which is part of the normal circle of generation and corruption. Examples from various sources illustrate this concept. In cartoons like Tom and Jerry, the characters seem to possess an indestructible body that endures extreme physical trauma, representing a kind of survival beyond the first death. Video games also operate on the logic of multiple lives and the ultimate second death, while all lives are lost. In literature and drama, figures like Antigone and the ghost of Hamlet's father embody different aspects of the relationship between the two deaths. Antigone's symbolic death precedes her physical death and gives her a sublime quality, while the ghost represents an unsolved death that haunts until the symbolic debt is settled. 3. Benjamin's thesis on history and the concept of revolution. Zizek then turns to Walter Benjamin's thesis on the philosophy of history. Benjamin's unique perspective on history as a text, while meaning is retroactively determined, is analyzed. His idea of a tiger leap into the past and the suspension of historical movement in the revolutionary movement is compared to the psychoanalytic concept of transference. The revolutionary art is seen as an attempt to redeem past failed attempts and to give meaning to the past. This is contrasted with the Stalinist view of history, which, despite its claim of progress, is criticized for its hidden idealism, that the belief in a final goal that guides history. Benjamin's view represents a more radical break, seeing revolution as a moment of creation and the annihilation of the previous symbolic order. 4. The figure of the communist and concept of democracy. Zizek further explores the figure of the communist in the Stalinist vision, drawing a parallel between the communists' supposed indestructibility and the idea of the second death. The communist is seen as being between the two deaths, possessing a kind of sublime body that endures and overcomes difficulties. This is compared to the classical master, and the differences in their legitimation mechanisms are discussed. In totalitarianism, the leader's claim to power based on the will of the people is analyzed, and the paradox of the people's non-existence as a unified entity in democracy is explored. Elections in democracy are seen as a moment of symbolic dissolution of the social edifice, representing the risk and openness that define democracy. In contrast, real democracy in totalitarian systems is criticized as a misnomer that actually undermines the essence of democracy. In conclusion, this chapter weaves together Lacanian psychoanalytic concepts, Benjamin's philosophy of history, and political theory to offer a unique perspective on the nature of history, revolution, and the political subject. It changes traditional views and provides a deeper understanding of the complex relationships between these different domains.